Hey everyone, Pbr Render, and today I'm super excited to be showing you one of my favorite assets to use with Unity, and that's the OTOY Octane Render. Recently came out, and it's a super useful tool if you want to render out anything that looks super professional and super high quality. Whether that be skyboxes for your game, whether that be images for a trailer, whether that be videos for a trailer. This is the tool that you really want to use for that. So there's definitely a lot within Octane to cover, and this is just going to be the installation process and just kind of some tweaks. If there's anything you want to see, definitely leave a comment below, and I will try to do more videos like this because Octane is a really, really awesome tool. So let's dive into the website a little bit. First off here, you can see just the page and one of the renders that came out of Octane. Let's dive into some of the features, which is the separate tab. And you can see it is a Pbr tool. So what that means is that this is useful for rendering super physically based rendered assets, which means the materials, you just supply properties of kind of how the light should bounce off of it, and Octane will do all of the calculations for you. So that's in and of itself is super awesome. I didn't mention before, but this is not a real-time tool. That means that your renders might take seconds to minutes, potentially even hours, but that's what it takes to get like film quality assets, especially on big scenes. So that's one of the things to keep in mind when using this. You have a node graph material editor, which is super awesome. We'll dive into that in the video as well. You have path trace lighting, which gives you that really film-like quality effect. And you can even bake some light maps, and that's still in beta, but still can get you a high level of quality. Also want to point out that they have super awesome guides, and these guides are basically, after this video, highly recommend checking out them because they're super helpful and dive specifically into each and every tool that you might want to use. So if you have any specific things that you want to cover, all the guides that you have here, and you also see a bunch of beautiful different renders that come out of it. So guides are super awesome. Last thing I'll mention is that the support is really well done. I had an issue a few months ago when I was trying the beta, and they responded within a few hours. So if you run into any issue, definitely recommend checking out the support because they're great. So with that said, let's just dive into the code. Here in Unity now, this is just a fresh Unity project. That's really all you need to do this. I am running Unity 2017.3. You can use this from anything from 0.1 up. So all you got to do is go to the asset store, and when you're here, just type in Octane. You'll see that there are a bunch of different assets that you can use. Specifically, you'll be looking at these 6 different things that are published by OTOY. I'm going to be jumping into the OctaneRender for Unity one, but you can really use any of those 6 to get started. Let's go ahead and just quickly import this. If you haven't gotten this, it'll just be a download button. And just go ahead and hit import. It takes a second, so I'll cut to whenever this is done. Once it's finally done installing, you'll see a few folders here, and you'll probably get this prompt to say that you need to enable Unity for Octane. Go ahead and do that. All right, so you might get a pop-up. I would say don't worry about that. And once that's done, go ahead and close the asset store. You won't need it anymore. Actually, real quick before I do that, if you just read the description here, you'll notice that they're trying to work towards cinematic rendering, which kind of goes back to what I said at the intro, which is it's really trying to be the tool to help Unity create film quality assets. So definitely you can use this for rendering stuff for pretty much anything and kind of get that film quality effect. So highly recommend that for that. And just going back to the description kind of shows what they're trying to do. Let's go ahead and close that. You'll see a couple of things down here, but before we jump into the actual scene, let's go to Octane, and you should see a lot of this stuff is grayed out. That's because we need to load up Octane. To do that, you're gonna have to hit load Octane. It will try to download its initial stuff. You might have to hit load Octane a couple of times. Once to initialize it with Unity so that you tie your accounts together. The second time to actually download it, and then the third time would be to actually enable it. So hopefully if you get through that process a few times, you'll end up getting it to the point where it says unload Octane, and you'll see here that this stuff gets disabled. and my account is set up already. We have, it detects your GPU, you can see what I'm running, and you can set up a few things just to optimize your own running. I'm just going to leave it at the defaults, but if you need to for your own device, you can do that as well. So now that we've loaded Octane, I'm going to go ahead and close that, and let's just go ahead and jump into that scene. So let's go here and open up our scene that we just downloaded. Move around and just move a little backwards from here. Cool. So here's the scene, and I mean, as you'd expect, that kind of looks the same as you would get from a typical Unity scene. What we're going to do is take this scene and make it film ready. So to do that, let's just quickly dive into it. You go to your Pbr Render Target, just go ahead, click Render. That's going to bring up Octane's special view that allows it to render for itself. And you can, as you can see right here already, you're getting a pretty amazing image, and that image then you can use for film quality assets. So this is just your first taste at getting something very different out of Unity. So I mean, if you even put this side by side, let's go ahead and do that. You'll see here, I mean, there's a night and day difference just between the lighting. And this is in part because that this asset is doing stuff that takes a lot longer than real-time rendering, but you get a lot of better effects out of it. So that's why Octane is super exciting. Now, let's just kind of dive into what this Pbr Render Target is, because I kind of dived into it really fast. So you have the option to render whatever you have to a texture. You can change your camera, and this is actually specifically important if you're trying to get a skybox render out of it. You can kind of change this to get some certain effects. So what I'm actually going to do is make this on the editor first, one, so that you can kind of see the effects. So you can do some sort of real-time actually building of your scene if you want to do that. But if you just kind of want to get from one perspective, you can just kind of set it to either your game view or a custom view. I'm also going to go and switch this to a panoramic view. And you can see already that I'm kind of getting a rectangular view that you typically get with a 360 skybox. Now you can render this however you want. If you're trying to put this back into Unity, the cylindrical tends to work the best, but you can play around with any of these to really get whatever effect you want. You have a bunch of physical properties if you want to change the different actual aspects of the camera. One thing to keep in mind about like true physically based rendering is that you're thinking about not how you can hack the graphics, but how you can actually apply different effects. So like when I say I have this camera, it has a focal length and it has an f-stop, those get applied to how you actually render it. And so I think that's a kind of neat part to kind of keep in mind of how Octane is different from traditional game computing. You also have like the viewing angle. I'm just going to skip a bunch of this, but if you want, you can also get stereo. There's a bunch of different stuff that you can get for actually rendering your scene, which is really nice. Let's go ahead, close that out. It's kind of, if you want a skybox like that, that's cool too. You have the environment view. You can change kind of how things get rendered, kind of the environment settings. Lots of different stuff to play with there. You have film settings, which I think is interesting, especially if you want to change the resolution of what you get. You can see here I'm running at 1920 by 1080. Probably want to bump this up if you want something really fancy, but if not, don't even have to worry about that too much. That's there more for the output. You have animations here, which we're going to get to in a little bit, but this helps you with those. You've got the kernel, which is actually really important. I recommend checking out one of the guides that Octane has to really figure out how to fine-tune it. High level, what this is it basically allows you to tweak how the scene gets rendered, specifically on the lighting side of things. So you can see here you have like a direct lighting versus like path tracing, which gives you more fine-tuned control of the reflections and the lighting. If you want the highest quality, I'd probably recommend keeping it at path tracing for sure. So let's go ahead, close that out. You have render layers. Render passes is interesting if you want different effects. If you want, for example, a diffuse render, or if you want like reflections or even the noise, you can just click on these, and as soon as it renders, you can just click here to see what those actual renders look like. So kind of interesting if you want to get kind of the different views at different passes and maybe potentially combine them together later on. So you have that option as well. And last here is your post-processing. So Unlike Unity's traditional post-processing, which is kind of more designed for real-time, these are more designed for actually rendering your image at a higher fidelity. So you've got the bloom, so you can get some really bright effects, or you can really dim it down, kind of up to you. Let's see, just go ahead and hit undo there. You also have a glare, which is, again, a lot of these you need to like tweak very slightly to actually get the right effect. Otherwise, you're going to end up with very, very bad looking scenes. And you have a bunch of other stuff that, again, a lot of this is just playing around with to kind of find out the right tunes. And the nice part is that a lot of these also give you that ability to map the real world to the virtual space. So that's, again, all of what's happening in the Pbr Render Target in a nutshell. So I'm going to go ahead, switch back the camera to our thin lens here, just so we can get a nice view right there. And what I want to do to just play around with this is just show you how you could do animations. And the beauty of this is actually a lot of the Unity built-in tools actually work with Octane. So you can see here we have our spaceship Octane logo, whatever you want to call it. And what I'm going to just show you is I can rotate this. Obviously, the Octane viewport rotates to match that. And we can instead go to our animation tool. If you want to use timeline, that works as well. I personally prefer Mechanim, but to each their own. I'm going to go ahead, create my own just simple 360 rotate animation. Just call it rotate. I'm going to save it on my assets folder. Let's go there, do that. And so here's our animation there. Let's go ahead and add a property on the transform, rotate. So let's do this over a second, and let's go ahead, open up our rotations right here. You can see that we're set to 0 initially. What I'm going to do is click on the end, click on our Y right here, and just change that to 360. Now if we hit play, we've kind of got a janky little animation here, and the reason for that is we need to go to our dope sheet and fix that. I'm going to stop it just so that it's not looping forever. And let's just go ahead, right click on that and change it to auto instead of clamped auto. And then also make sure that it's set to linear. And let's also make sure that I'm actually clicking on the right thing. There we go, auto. You can zoom out with your mouse and do the same thing on the top right here, just change that to auto. So you get a nice line, and what that means is that you're getting a linear interpolation across the whole rotation there, and that basically makes it nice and smooth. So if I go ahead and hit play here, well, you can see it's trying to update in real time, which isn't going to happen. But the advantage here now is you can go to Octane Recorder, and I'm going to go ahead and dock this right here. The Octane Recorder allows you to pipe out all of these images in a much slower fashion than what you get in the real-time scene view, and have that as a bunch of images that you can composite into a video. So super valuable here as far as actually creating custom film assets. So we have our image recorder. If you want, you can send it into Orbex, which is Octane's version that you can pop into their own applications. You have a few different outputs. I'm just going to leave it as PNG 8-bit. You can change your output path. So in this case, what I'm going to do is send that into my videos and into Octane video. Go ahead and select there. And last but not least is you can change the file name. I'm just going to delete all of this and just set it to render pass, which you need to have as a tag. And I'm going to add the frame number and the extension. That's it. You can then decide how you want to actually render everything. I'm going to set this to time interval, which allows you to set how long you actually want to render for. In this case, we just want to render for a second, and you can also change your FPS. I would hit start now, but hitting start now would probably take forever, so I'll let you do that if you're following along with this video. But that's basically all you need to do to actually render out something for Octane, and that's it. I mean, it's a bunch of just straight up Unity knowledge for the most part. There are a couple additional stuff like this Pbr viewport, and there's also things like the Pbr Render Target. One thing I should probably also point out is on any of these things, you have a Pbr instance property which allows Octane to know that something exists. But yeah, that's about it. The last thing I should point out before I wrap up this video is the Octane material editor, which I'll be honest is a lot cleaner than Unity's material editor. So the way you use this is you can add a bunch of textures here that you'll later use within Octane. Go ahead, click View Source. You can see here that we have a very traditional node-based material editor. This is something that if you've used Unreal before, very similar. Basically, all you're doing here is kind of walking your way down out until you get to this material out right at the bottom here. Now what that is basically saying what the final output should be onto whatever mesh you're rendering. And in this case, you can see there's a lot of different inputs at the top layer that then get processed here, whether that's like a glossy material on some subparts of the mesh, or you have like a little dirt texture in the middle. A bunch of different things to kind of add a bunch of different effects to whatever is getting rendered. But at the end of the day, it's just a finite state machine of some kind where the textures are the inputs and your material is the output, and you have a lot of different processes like those materials that you can add into your graph to kind of get whatever effects you want. So that's basically how the material editor works. I think once you get used to this, this is actually a much better workflow as far as actually building things. And kind of glad that Octane took this approach to actually building out a finite, really clean material editor. So super happy about that. And yeah, that's kind of the high level stuff that definitely a lot here to talk about as far as what's going on within Octane. But let me know in the comments again if there's anything you want to see in particular with Octane. There's definitely way too much to cover in just one video. And if you haven't already and you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because that helps us out a ton. You can also share this video with a friend. And yeah, that pretty much does it. I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, this has been FusedMan, and I'm signing out.